Coming live from Longmont, Colorado, USA is our guest this morning. Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Robbie Phoenixx, ZS Executive Leader, Keynote Speaker, Competitive Intelligence Expert, and a rock star. Welcome to the show, Robbie.
AJ, it's my honor. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India, and I'm sure a lot of people in India, especially small businesses, creative people, top people in businesses, they'll be able to make benefit out of whatever you have to say, whatever you have to share, and not just in India, but also in many corners of the world. So my first question to you, Robbie, is to help my Indian audience understand how should they know who Robbie is. How would you like to tell them who is Robbie Phoenixx? Who is he? Is he a creative person? Is he a corporate person? Is he a tech person? Who is Robbie Phoenixx for the Indian audience?
Well, I'll say this. At the core of who Robbie Phoenixx is a guy that can leverage his creative authenticity and creative skills to his competitive advantage. So I started my career in tech, and I led 2 Fortune 100 companies, directly contributing $254 million as a competitive intelligence expert. And by that happened to be in the tech field for 2 Fortune 100 US-based companies, Verizon, and also with Lumen Technologies. However, Robbie Phoenixx is reborn into his new authentic self also as a rock star. So I've taken that same approach, that strategic and creative approach, and I blended it into the music industry to earn 30 million song plays in our debut release without a record deal. And we're also partnered with Live Nation on a filming venture. So it's kind of bringing the two worlds together when you leverage your creative advantage, in fact, for your competitive advantage. And that's to the tune of $254 million. And that's who I am.
Right, Robbie. Not only you create music, what you do, what you help with the corporates is also a lot of music to their ears, and they get going to the bank because it's a lot of profit that you bring to them. So my first question to you in this aspect, Robbie, is that is it so easy for creative people who are in the corporate to live with that creativity amidst all the corporate sense and nonsense sometimes that is happening? Because even hard-boiled corporate people are finding it difficult to survive in these environments when there is talk of lack of good leadership, empathetic leadership, the great resignation that is happening, the quiet quitting that is happening. Amidst all these things, what would you like to tell the creative people who are in the corporate wanting to do something like what you are doing and to make sense of it all? How would you like to? Because we'll be focusing also about the leadership, because a leadership is very important, and how one can count to be a good leader that his team can count on. How do you look at 2-3 things at the same time, but they're so interrelated? I thought, why not share with you so that you can answer them at your own pace? What would you be your advice to the creative people? How long should they be in their
Sure.
When should they get to do it? How did you do it for yourself?
Right. AJ, honestly, you really brought a very sincere, honest question to your audience, and I'll be honest back with you. I started my career not affording the turnpike toll or the gas to commute 100 miles every day. And that was over a period of 8 years that I built around me actually amazing people that wanted me to be successful. So I was a top salesperson nationwide at Verizon for 3 years. I had a team of 15 individuals around me that were super talented and committed that allowed me to be successful through their efforts and through the clients. And secondly, I'll say this. You can start humbly sometimes in life and you might forget your way. And when you get to a point where you're mastering some of your work and you want to be creative, especially in those corporate environments, It is a little bit lacking oxygen at times with certain leaders that don't always see the creative way as a way to catalyze and compete and win. And that was my expertise, again, was in competitive intelligence, where I was learning on the ground as a salesperson, as an engineer for 8 years combined, how to phenomenally compete to win. And so with that, what I would suggest is it really comes down to, first thing, it's my first rule in this. And please text me here in the US if you'd like more detail on this. I'd love to work with you, and I'd be honored to work with you. And I know this sounds kind of like patronizing and cliche, but for me, it really works. Be yourself. Don't make apologies for being creative in your work environment where, yes, we live in times where there are cutbacks. We live in times where there is the great silent layoff that's happening here and there. But be your authentic self and bring it all to your workplace in a way that allows others to work through you and around you in a good way. That's my first advice. The second thing I would say is take it on yourself to educate heavily. Just because you have your degree, please don't consider yourself an expert in anything. That's your foundation. And I'm sure your professors would agree. The good ones probably still have their doors open to you, by the way, as mine have had in my life, and I've been very blessed for that. So take the opportunity to educate deeply. And how I did it, and the way it worked for me in tech, is I went through network architecture learning. I went through studying, believe it or not, how to run marketing campaigns. Because as an engineer, I didn't know any of this, but I wanted to learn. So I learned about the provisioning and billing codes and circuit IDs and all these things. And before you know it, I was starting to connect the dots, because being a former top salesperson and an engineer, you go, okay, I know this marketplace. I know the main competitors. I know generally their pricing. How do I put this jigsaw puzzle together to compete to win in a campaign? And I was working with talented people at Verizon to help me. Marilyn Curl was one of those people. Mary Jean Navaji, another human being that helped me develop in those roles that led to that success. So it'll say in my LinkedIn profile, and it's going back a little ways, when I was assigned in Philadelphia, and the leadership said, hey, you're a pretty good engineer. You're not the most technical, but you're out there busting your tail in the field every day, and you're with the client and they're happy, and the salespeople are learning, and that's good. And that you're learning through them as well. What are you up to? And I was the quiet guy that was creative in my desk, literally till 1 to 3 in the morning regularly, working and getting up and being in the office before 9 a.m. every day again. And while I was learning all this campaign stuff, the team I was assigned to in Philadelphia was at 43% of their goal for the year inside of April when I was assigned. And I led 3 campaigns because I had good people around me. Again, Steve Coance in Pittsburgh at Verizon, Joe Murray in Pittsburgh at Verizon, and also Jim Bowers here in Philadelphia, where I sat at the time. And they allowed me to experiment with this campaign launch, which they were like, all right, he's a pretty sharp guy. He knows a lot. And they called me Dr. Z back then for that reason, incidentally. And we led the team in Philadelphia's results from 43% year to date to all the way to 163% by end of year. And that was the first time I can honestly say in my career, I was given the authority in myself to do my best, number one. I educated my ever-loving butt off with people around me that had the experience to know how to run campaigns and teach me along the way. And I combined that with what I knew about the competitive marketplace and look at the results. So that was the first time. And that's my best advice on your question, honestly, just living it as a true authority.
Right, Robbie. Then how does, this creative thing work when you are? Because you believe that, one leader should try and tap into individuals' creative advantages, and in fact creative advantages of each team member. How does that work? Is it that creative people who are within organizations, they have something special, and rather than finding it that, oh, this guy is just wasting time, every day he's rushing to do something else, and he should be focusing on more sales, are they missing out on that creative advantage that lies within, and that they should make use of it, leverage it? What would you like to tell leaders in terms of creative people who are there within the organization, who can help them win lot many things. How do you look at it so that these creative people do not get frustrated, get out of the system,
Right.
and also perhaps become part of the great resignation, or maybe want to start something on their own? What would you like to tell leaders here to leverage the creative advantage that their creative people bring?
Vijay, again, you really bring it home for your audience, and I'm gonna lay it out like this to you. Okay, when I started early in my sales career, I went quietly into parts of the meetings that were before and after meetings when the elders were gathering. They were the indirect sales and partner channel, incidentally. Companies like the Beacon Group back in my day in telecom that I had great respect for, because these guys and girls had 30, 40 years experience. What am I going to teach them? So I went in just to listen and be the fly on the wall, and I was too shy at the time to introduce. I'll tell you another example in my life where you've got to challenge your leadership to step up a little. And by the way, that's okay to do that, and in a good way. If you're already performing in your role, and you're earning awards that were nationwide recognition at the time. I was very blessed for all this. From my humble, true beginnings of being broke. I couldn't afford the gas when I started my career. But here I am as a top salesperson nationwide. I move into a technical role, and I'm starting to ask the right questions to my leadership. Hey, what do you think the responsibility is for a regional technical support team when some of the teams that we're supporting directly are not at their sales objective? So what do we do about it? It's not just that we design a network solution and we know the architecture and we know the technology and the products. That's kind of peanut butter and jelly sometimes. You may want to challenge ourselves to develop in roles in ways that are unique, and we broadband our skills and our learning in that process. So I was challenging the leadership a little along the way, humbly, and just asking the right questions with a good heart while performing in role. So they had no concerns for me asking the questions and me getting distracted for being a creative. And at the same time, I made it my side hustle, literally. You don't think a campaign is run from an engineer sitting at a desk in Philadelphia? You'd be quite correct. That was a big no-no. It never happened. And by the time the design aspects were known, I get sucked into meetings with the senior product team and their leadership, because they want to know, how is it that I know what I know? And why is it that I'm asking for all these unique requests in their databases to run these campaigns? And what does it mean? What does it mean to compete to win in this sense? And what is my intended outcome in all this? So it was kind of educating the product teams along the way as well. And I was fortunate enough, and I'll drop names for fun, not that your audience may know these people, but Kathy Coley, our vice president of sales at the time, John Havens, our vice president of marketing. Incidentally, that's what opened up the door of my career to serve as a, believe it or not, a founder and a leader of the competitive intelligence practice nationwide, was doing these kinds of things and partnering with friends in New York like Lori Farrar at Verizon at the time. And it was that kind of environment. We didn't just sit back and do our jobs and complain about, well, we're creative, we think there's a better way. We took initiative to educate, leverage the people around us, and we made it happen.
Right. So what would you suggest to leaders? Some people don't care, but there are many leaders who care but they don't know how to do it. So what would you suggest, Robbie, to those people who would actually want to help people with a creative bent of mind within the organization? And secondly, how can they actually tap into that creativity for whatever they are doing in their organization? Is there a particular way they can do it?
Yes.
Because everybody may not be able to make that connect between the two.
Yes,
not everybody has that insight into it. So
I agree.
What would you like to suggest to them?
Well, the traditional way I know in the US-based corporations that I've served, and they're 2 Fortune 100 companies, there were 3 tracks they tried, right? The one was get a mentor, right? And learn through them and navigate through the business more effectively. The second track was get a sponsor. And the sponsor is very different than a mentor, which is they will be your executive champion beating the tin cans to push your initiatives forward and your career succession. And then the third thing they tried was, well, we're just going to expand their scope of responsibility and kind of see how it works out and put them on a succession plan. And if it works out, we'll move them up the chain through succession management and talent management. Well, the challenge with all this stuff is, in my humble opinion, and I'm not an HR practitioner, my wife is, by the way, we've had hundreds of discussions on this stuff, is it gets people like me caught in the middle going, I'm a little bit too humble and shy to put myself forward to get promoted because God knows there are a lot of other people around me that are likely worthy. This other part that I had to challenge as an individual contributor was I don't have a span of control of 100 people under me to effectuate change. So it really became, in my world at least, punting self-assignments to prove to leadership that I had not only thought leadership, that I had managerial acumen to bring to the marketplace and execute hundreds of millions of dollars of campaigns. That's what it came down to. My advice to corporations, humbly said, and I mean this super humbly, hire me, text me, call me, because I've lived it all. And I've really been through hundreds of intelligence briefings with several dozen senior leaders in Fortune 100 companies to know how these games are played well and how to succeed. And I've got playbooks that will teach you how to succeed. I've got deep consulting wells of people and networks all over the world, including in India, incidentally, that can leverage our creativity for your competitive advantage and bring you tens of millions of dollars literally to the door.
Right, Robbie. Right. Now, coming to the leadership itself. Mm-hmm. Leadership wants to create, winning teams. Mm-hmm. So, how do you see leadership in today's time? Mm-hmm. Should the leader look at creating winning teams, or should the team look at the leader to be the one who helps them win or prepare to win? How do you look at what is the role of the leader here in the present environment?
AJ, I'm going to tell you straight because you asked me to be candid, right? Before we prep for this. So I hope your audience may receive this with a good heart.
Absolutely.
Don't expect from your leaders all the answers. Number one, please don't do that to them. Okay? They're human like you. And they have a deep heart to care to take on a leadership role typically as well. And for the leaders, I say this. Please don't micromanage your team and stifle their creativity and stifle their ability to experiment to get things right. Because we're all stuck in our calendars. We're all stuck on our mobile phones. We're all thinking we're doing the right things by dancing the corporate dance with all the meetings and all the butt kissing. But let me tell you, Robbie Phoenixx will tell you at the end of the day, and I mean this with a great heart, and I have employees I've managed directly that will attest to this on LinkedIn through their experience. I chose to take it the Steve Jobs method, and I created a team that incubated true innovation, number one, so anything was open. They could come to me and tell me their kid has a bloody nose. They can go home and I'll have their back. They could come in and say, Robbie, I'm taking 2 weeks off because I haven't had a 2-week vacation in my life. And I'll say, awesome. And the minute they come back to the office, you know what happens? You have more loyalty out of them than you could ever bought with any money or any promotion. Number two, the innovation part. So yes, in my world, in my teams, I allowed that oxygen to exist. And we had regular meetings around, hey, look, we brought in 10,000 pricing records this month to compete to win globally. How do we up our ante in the next quarter? What are we looking to do in our skill set, in our workflow, and our tools and resourcing so that we're going to get knocks on our own door to do more work inside of our company? So it really is that kind of thing. You don't want to go to your leaders and expect them please for all the answers. And the leaders should be looking to their teams to develop that innovation and to really own it, right? It's not just the work. The work's got to get done the way that it's being done. It's just you're going to have to be willing as a leader to allow them the flexibility and the permission to do their best and to not put it on calendars and not put it in spreadsheets to show the ROI, because you know how that game is played. They want to show ROI, and everyone, especially in public companies, the pressure is typically on to do that. And you've got to have employees willing to go to the mat and do more. And that's the bottom line. So Steve Jobs, to me, had it right. He said, when you hire right, they'll teach you how to manage the business. And I have the pleasure today, before this broadcast, in fact, to speak with my former employee that lives in India. His name is Mano Kantipudi. I love him dearly. and I know that he's listening right now, so I'm going to say this. 4 years later, we've developed a work relationship, and tonight we officially are talking about launching our own software venture because of the innovative work we created together that our company had no clue about. They wouldn't know it from a hole in the wall to this day. And while we left the company, their share price was probably $20, $30 a share. They're down to $3 a share 4 years later because they didn't have a clue what we were doing to create the value that we've created. And we're pretty excited to bring it to market. So that's my best advice. I hope that was clear.
Yeah, indeed. And congratulations on the new venture that is getting launched today. So that's going to be something wonderful that you have declared on the show itself. Very nice. So let's talk about leadership itself. You said, Robbie, that don't count in terms of your leaders do not have all the answers. Then what answers can we expect from the leaders? And how do I know that if my leader doesn't have have all the answers or many of the answers that I seek, then how can I count on him or her? And how does also the leader who knows that he or she does not have all the answers ensure still that he or she can motivate their team enough and that they are somebody that their team can count on? Because if you don't create that understanding between you and the team, then that relationship won't exist.
Correct.
And there will be a big problem. So how does it work in today's time when if both the sides do not have all the answers, how do they together find those answers that's going to help the organization? What do you tell in your keynote as a keynote speaker to all those people that you speak in front of about using their creative advantage as their competitive advantage? Because it's the leader's job to ensure a lot of things.
It is. And that's where the accountability really needs to initially sit, right? Initially. And look, I was on the phone with a former colleague of mine. His name is Tom Nugent. He still works at Verizon today. He's a vice president in their consumer market division. And I had the privilege of telling him after 15 years, he decides to pick up the phone and speak with me for over an hour. And I said, Tom, you have such an amazing way of motivating people to do outstanding things. Like, this is something that I wish I could bottle and sell to myself, literally, in my career. And so at the end of the day, I think the starting point for the leadership pool is to really get inside people a little bit more and motivate them. Show them that you care. Don't just show up 8 to 5 and disappear and go have a fancy dinner or get on a jet. Show them you have skin in the game and show them you're there for them in all times, not just when it's award handing out and you're patting the top 10% of those employees on the back. Because you know what? That's a really easy job for an executive. And so that's the first thing I would share with the executive pool. And I say that respectfully. The second part I would share with the executive pool is be willing to acknowledge that you don't know a lot of stuff. Because, I've served mid-senior roles in my career, and I can tell you hundreds of times that I've learned from my team and through my team because I hired them the right way. I did the work. I did all the interviewing. I did the screening. I did even simulations to see that they were capable to be proficient creatively in roles that I needed them to serve. So don't get in the way of your ego. Don't hide or suppress that you don't know something. Own it and be honest about it and enjoy the fact that you have people around you that can actually do amazing things if you allow them to express and to be part of that team, even if they're not at a certain title or a certain ladder in the company, even for that matter. So leverage from all levels of management and be humble in the learning of things you don't know. The third thing I would say to the senior leadership is please, please, please strategically network, which is one part of it, right? Go to your peers in, say, carrier services or in software development or in sales distribution, whatever the challenge vectors are. Don't just build the relationships at your level. Take it down 2 levels to where the people that are doing the work are seeing improvements and seeing actual partnership and cooperation and learning as well. And that's the third thing I think for bigger companies that I served, at least, that was the magic secret sauce. When you could build relationships between sales and marketing or marketing and customer fulfillment, customer provisioning, technical support, all this, the world gets a lot easier. and a lot more can get done.
Right, right, Robbie. So now let's come to the music part of what you do. And if I understand correctly, it's your band's name is Sonic Octane. Am I right?
It is. Yes, it is.
Right, right. So how did you actually plan out this transition from Robert ZS to Robbie Phoenixx? And how did you work on this branding? What, why, and how of what of all of it, so that musicians and other people who are on the creative side, they know exactly how to do what you have already done.
I mean, honestly, like all things, right? If you want to serve a purpose, and by the way, I'm working with a phenomenal company out of Dallas. I want to mention them, if I may, briefly. They're called the Purpose Company. They're a husband-wife team, and they've looked at some of my inroads of humble success, so $250 million in the door on the corporate side. I'll tell you exactly how I leveraged my creative advantage for my competitive advantage in music, and I have to give credit where credit's due to Gabrielle and Brian Bosch, who are my leaders in my brand development of Robbie Phoenixx, incidentally. And I love them dearly, and I thank them for everything they've done with me so far. And I'm really looking forward to an amazing ride with them. But at the end of the day, here's what I did. I, first of all, for 3 years nearly, I moonlighted between creative ventures and doing my real job at work, and doing it phenomenally well because in part of the team around me. The second thing I did was I took it like an apprenticeship. So instead of going to a lot of artists, they like to go to the record label and, oh, give me a budget for a video. Please give me a budget to tour because I need tour support to drive around in a bus and hit a bunch of clubs and pretend I'm a rock star. Or they'll say, give me a little bit more cut of my brand because I want some percentage off my merch. Like whatever their angle is. I kind of said to myself, and I was in a position to do so in a corporate life at the time, who cares? I don't need a record label. What do I need a record label for when I can self-produce my content? So I went to filmmakers in a community college, the Colorado Film School here, locally outside of Denver. And I said, guys, I know it's your last year of study. It's the fall semester. And in the spring, you're springing the coop to probably Hollywood. And you're going to need content to promote yourself. So in addition to your study reel, why don't I fund a creative venture, and we'll rent a raceway, and we'll film a bunch of cool content of Shelby Cobras peeling out for Sonic Octane. What do you think about that? And literally, they were excited. They're thrilled because now they've got gimbals, they've got drones, they've got all the tools they need. It's a private venture, so they can do it at their leisure to plan the whole thing, which they were meticulous planners for all the good they did. And that's what started my brand, Sonic Octane. And that led to the next thing, which was, guess what? About a year and a half later, after some other legwork and filming, I started building the talent bench for the band. And the band, I had all this music here in my demo studio I was slowly pulling together so I could write some of the foundational music for that project. And I started bringing in and experimenting with and allowing myself to learn and make ups and downs, the learnings and the failures, by the way, say it humbly. And eventually I found a few that were the right fit for a period of this brand. And for all that, that became fun because we started then performing in clubs and getting the set list going and rocking it out. And then guess what? I upped the game into 4 months of that band being in place. And after the filming work I had done already, I went to New York at the invitation of a producer that led me to my very first independent film deal. Now, what got really cool with that was, and it was all relationship based. This wasn't me being some business genius, quite candidly and honestly. And this wasn't like some, let's say, something that was mastermind on LinkedIn with Sales Navigator or something, right? This was just salt of the earth, knowing people like you, AJ, that are good human beings that care for people. And at the end of the day, I was introduced because of that to a filmmaker. They put our music inside of their film, which was a 5-episode miniseries that gets 30 million song plays 2 years later, that gets submitted for a daytime Emmy consideration. And we also started working with Live Nation at that point to film. So it was kind of 3 steps in the creative world: moonlighting and going bare bones and just working long hours and being humble to learn as an apprentice. Then it was staffing the brand and getting that with independent film school students. And then it was ratcheting it up through relationships. No business acumen here, I promise you. It was more just humble pie and doing the miles and traveling to meet people and building goodwill. And that led to greater things that ultimately was Live Nation. So
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm sure a lot of people will would learn from you, and actually, so and a lot of people want to know more about you, Robbie. So, how do people connect with you? What's the best way to connect? And in terms of hiring you also as a speaker, keynote speaker for their events, want to know more about you? What's the best way? And also how to connect with your band in terms of so that they are able to again know about the band as well as work with you guys if possible.
well, the first thing I'd suggest is if you're in the US, by all means, text me direct. It comes straight to my mobile phone. I've been working with Fortune 100 clients for many, many years now. So AT&T, Verizon, Lumen, I could go on, Live Nation, Sony, The Orchard, all of these guys. And at the end of the day, you can text me direct at 33777. Just type in the word Robbie, Robbie. The second way you can reach me, if you don't want to text and you're not in the US mainland, is find me on LinkedIn. I'm at Robert Zeas, all together. Robert Zeas, and that last name again is Zeas on LinkedIn. And connect with me there and message me. And I'd be delighted to work with you and speak. As you can see, I'm a bit social when it comes to these things. And I've been speaking at international conferences on and off for 15 years. One of the largest ones I spoke at was to 40,000 attendees at the request of the International Bar Association, interestingly. And that was for a creative summit that they were having on business development for attorneys. So that video is out on my LinkedIn profile if you want to check that out. To follow the band Sonic Octane, please follow us on Twitter. We're Sonic Band Fan, SONICBANDFAN, or you can find us on Facebook, either way.
Right, right. So my last question to you, Robbie, is that looking at this whole journey into the corporate life, corporate America, the tech industry, and now on in the music industry, how do you see this whole thing? Is it more satisfactory now because you are earning the way you want to, or is it that you finally feel that you have reached home? What is more home for you, that part or this part, or is it that home is what you are still searching for?
I'm going to tell you honestly, AG, I just got to be honest and keep it real. There are days I've gone without money, without food. There are days in my band that literally I didn't know how I'd afford the diesel to drive home from New York. I've sold Rolexes, I've sold guitars. However, the flip side of that is, and truth be known, and this is something some people in corporate America are likely going to be envious of, because I was once upon a time, I wake up when I feel like it. I work when I want to work for that client because I believe in them and I care deeply. I share my intelligence, my competitive intelligence, because it is a very fine art to do this work. And I share it with the clients that are ethical, that have a backbone, that deserve the support around them. Now, as opposed to before, I was working 2 intelligence briefings average a month. That's over 20 a year. That was a quarter of my job responsibility, managing a team, running a server for pricing, and doing all this other research ad hoc stuff. So end of the day, I have a little bit more freedom now. On the creative side, I would humbly tell you, honestly, that's still a work in progress. I'm not stopping just because we worked with Live Nation. We had a daytime Emmy submission and we had 30 million song plays. I want to up the game. So this year I'm working rather diligently now, quietly, like a lot of entrepreneurs do behind the scenes, to put infrastructure in place. And so this evening I was on the phone with my friend Mano and I was tending to the flooring on my tour bus, because that is a platform that will help this band turn a profit more than any other band on the road, literally. So that's part of what I'm doing right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what is it that you actually are seeking for yourself? Is it more in terms of music, or more in terms of money, or is it beyond something else? You are a creative person at heart.
Well, here's the thing. I'm a little older in life. I have children. And I could go into a corporate setting and make a tremendously lucrative living and a fulfilling living in some ways. I also know this. I put my music down in the beginning of my career to serve my family. So in a selfish way, perhaps, I would suggest to you there was some meaning in the music that I've written. So we've talking about anti-violence and things like cancer, people passing of cancer. And these are parts of my legacy that I'd like to say in 10 years that the world might embrace humbly. And I'll send you some content after the interview if you'd like just to share it with your audience. But the idea is I'm building legacy here now. It's no longer about a W-2 paycheck and some benefits, and I get a little 2 to 4 week vacation a year. It's what am I really doing of consequence for the world? So my tagline is one world, one music, our world, right? One love, one music, our world. Excuse me, I just messed up my own tagline. But if you think about what that really means, when we one love all of humanity. And we don't cross borders in saying that. I've dated Russian women, incidentally. I have a Russian preamp behind me here that's custom built. I don't judge the people of those countries. I'll love them as Jesus at least asked me to love everyone. I also say one music because there's a beautiful music in every country that's unique and ethnically awesome. And every time I go to a local restaurant, by the way, that has amazing Indian food, Birachi Birani, and Mano, if you're listening, you know exactly where we're going when you visit next. I love the music. It's beautiful. And the vocalists that sing, I wish I could sing half that good. And the instrumentation, the sitars and the drum, the tabla, come on, man. So one music to me is a core philosophy. And the third is our world, because it is our world together, collectively. We should have no enemy. We should have no nuclear bombs threatening us every day with people in power that don't know how to leverage that power to a good end. And so for all that, that's my ethos. And what I want out of it, I want to build legacy. I want to help humanity in some meaningful way that's well beyond the pale of anything I could have done bringing $250 million in for 2 companies.
Wonderful. On this positive note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.